Okay, we are back learning our daily Chafetz Haim a day, the Mikdash Me'at, and today we're also going to add a new book called Enlighten Our Eyes, which we'll get to in just a moment. So let's continue on day 4 of Shulchan Aruch. The prohibition against Lashon Hara is neglected by many people due to two different ploys of the Yetzer Hara. So he tells you here why is what causes Lashon Hara to be neglected by so many people. He gives two great reasons here. He says that most people will right away say that what's being said is not Lashon Hara. So right away, you want to talk about something juicy, about some situation, someone that happened. Again, we don't know what Lashon Hara is because he didn't clarify what is Lashon Hara. But for the sake of this discussion, whatever Lashon Hara is, he says that most people, when that situation comes up and they want to say what they want to say, they'll say right away, it's not Lashon Hara. And then they'll say what they have to say. Yeah, so the Yetzer Hara tells them right away it's not Lashon Hara, meaning the guy, he may not know if it is Lashon Hara or not, but he convinces him saying it's not Lashon Hara, you could say it over. That's the first thing the Satan will do. The second thing the Satan does, he says, alternatively, it tells us that the Torah permits speaking Lashon Hara against the person in question. Okay, so he says the second thing that the Satan says, he tells the person, you can speak about that guy. He's like, that person you could talk Lashon Hara on, for whatever reason. He said this, he said that, you can speak Lashon Hara on him. So he tells you two things. First, he convinces the guy, he's like, what I'm saying is not Lashon Hara. So by doing that, the guy already thinks he's doing something okay. Then he tells him furthermore, even if it was Lashon Hara, he's like, I can speak about that guy for whatever reason. He's this or he's that. Okay, sometimes the Yetzer Hara employs the opposite tactic. He makes it even more. He makes the laws of Lashon Hara seem so difficult and strict. A person is led to believe everything is Lashon Hara and I can't speak about anything. Therefore, it's impossible to do it. I'm just going to move on with my life. That's another tactic that the Yetzer Hara uses. He tells the guy, look, it's impossible. It's like, how do you want to live? He's like, you're not going to be able to do anything at work. Now you're not going to answer any phone call. You can't speak with your wife. You can't speak with anybody. So he's like, it's too difficult. This is one of those mitzvot. You're patur aval asur. That's what the Satan tells the guy. Tells him you're patur. Obviously you can't do it, but that's what he's trying to tell the guy. Again, because he makes it so difficult that the guy is left with no option, that it's impossible for him to actually live and have a conversation without getting into this issue. So the Satan is very tricky. He tells the guy, you could speak. That's not Lashon Hara. Then he tells him, that person you could speak about. Then he tells him another thing. He's like, these laws are impossible to know anyway. Who in the world is going to do it anyway? Everyone speaks Lashon Hara. So he convinces you in a lot of ways to just avoid this mitzvah. And as we learned earlier, the reason for this is because this is the basis of what a human being is compared to an animal. An animal does not have the ability to speak. They have the ability to communicate amongst themselves. They can communicate. They want to mate. They want to make a nest. They want to get food, they found food, they're hungry, they can communicate, but they can't speak. And we also explained that the Rav Saadia Gaon explained what's the difference between humans and animals, is that besides bechira, bechira means the choice to do things, further is that we have the ability to give over information. Meaning an animal could acquire knowledge, but can't transfer that knowledge. That's like we said this morning, Moshe, that we have the ability to learn and then give over that knowledge that the next generation is advancing from the previous generation. That's the human ability that animals don't have. You understand? If an animal learned how to make a good nest, maybe those who watched him can do it, but he cannot teach it over to another generation of animals to do it. Maybe today they can prove it otherwise, but if they can, then we'll look into it and we'll find out how to explain this further. But up until that, okay, for all these reasons, their entire subject of refraining from Lashon Hara has fallen to the wayside. Based on these reasons, it's become very difficult. That's why most people they quit on it. People have become accustomed to freely speak as they wish without first considering if their words constitute Lashon Hara or Rechilut. What's the difference between Lashon Hara and Rechilut? Simple basis. Lashon Hara is something that is fully true that you're talking about. Rechilut is saying something over. That we're going to find out later the details of it. And then there's also Motzi Shem Ra. Motzi Shem Ra is when you completely said something that's a lie. That's the worst of all of them. That's like a guy is going around saying, oh, this guy did this, this, and this, and it's just factually untrue. That's Motzi Shem Ra. And if he did it by Rabim, we're going to see some of the effects of that. There are cases where if someone harmed somebody, physically, monetarily, or something, there is room to discuss it openly. because the guy was personally offended. We're going to get to those details later. So it's not that, we're going to get to it soon. Okay. We have been so accustomed to speaking Lashon Hara that many people do not even consider it a sin at all. Today we came to the point where people just talk about it and they don't even know. On the bottom of Sheminat Lashon, Sha'ar HaTorah, chapter 1, through Torah study, the damage caused by Lashon Hara can be repaid to some extent. The Gemara states in Arachin 15b, how can speakers of Lashon Hara correct their deeds? If they are Torah scholars, let them toil in Torah. As the verse says, a healing for the tongue is a tree of life, in the Mishlei 15.4. So it gives a tactic that by learning Torah, you're going to help improve your speech and get better. The basic understanding of that is that if you learn Hilchot Lashon Hara and you start to understand the value of speech, of the things that you do, then you're going to become more careful of it. And that's that. That's today's lesson over here. Let's go into Mikdash Me'at. We can continue. Mikdash Me'at is the book that discusses how to behave in synagogue. We've been talking a little bit about those who speak in Shul. It's important, I didn't mention this before. It's key. That just because we're learning this, I in no way encourage anyone to become a zealous or zealot in any way to go and tell anyone to not to do something or not speak Shul or even Chas v'Shalom throw someone out, unless you built your own Shul and your own minyan and you can do whatever you want. If you're the president of your own Shul, you have your own minyan and you want to make your own rules, by all means do it. There is a minyan I heard on 41st Street in Miami here, that's a no-talking minyan. And the guy who runs the minyan throws like a super deluxe Shabbat Kiddush every week that's like supposedly like a $3,000 Kiddush, deluxe, meat, drinks, everything. But in order to get into this minyan, you have to promise not to talk. He has a huge sign that says no talking in Shul, and he will call out anyone who talks in the Shul. The guy is supposedly a businessman who runs this minyan. He just loved it. It brought him a lot of beracha. So that's what he does. He has this minyan. It's his private minyan. He does it. Fine, great. I love this. You understand? But no way, in the Shul here to tell anyone anything. That's not what we're learning. We're learning this for education. It's an unfiltered education in the Torah from Mikdash Me'at, and that's what that's I think the basis. So one day, if one of you guys want to go out and open your own Shul and do this, great. I intend on doing this in my Shul. I'm in the process of building a Beit Midrash, like a 3,000 square foot Beit Midrash. I'll be ready before this coming summer in Deal, New Jersey. And I intend on enforcing this in the new minyan. It's going to be a super deluxe minyan. What I mean, like comfortable chairs, beautiful chairs and tables, but no talking in the minyan. If you want to come into this minyan, it's great, but no talking. If the guy has that ta'ava to speak, you can speak in another shul. So let's read here. If one arises and states that it is better for them to sin unintentionally, this is the answer to them. So what the book asks now, let's say Yossi, he was talking here about Mikdash Me'at, about people that speak in Shul. So he's talking about different conditions of how, whether it's allowed, not allowed, what's the severity of it. He says here that one might think that if someone does something by mistake, like speaking in Shul, it's better not to tell him anything and just let it go, because by not telling him, he's shogeg. Tov shiyu shogegim, like this, and then be mezid. So the question is, should you tell someone that's speaking in Shul at all, or should you just do it? Derech shalom, don't tell him anything. So look what he says here.
Well, you're not going to tell people it's going to be shogeg the whole life. He's never going to learn.
He's never going to learn anything. You're right. It's a good thing, but he asked the question. This book is about asking. He says, number one, all the holy Geonim who are referred to in the Sefer were true Ohavei Israel, which means they loved their Jew. They also knew this. But they were not oblivious, the Geonim, that not to be shogeg, and they still said it. But this is the way of our holy Torah. In Parashat Nitzavim it states, "See, today I have lain before you, the life is good." In Sefer Hasidim, Siman 262, it says, where it says about Yisrael that it's better for them to sin unintentionally than intentionally, applies only in the private domain, but not in the synagogue. He said the source of someone saying, that it's better to be b'shogeg and not b'mezid, was not talking if someone is doing it publicly. It was talking if a guy is in his house. Guy came over, a friend of yours, you went to his house, and on Shabbat, I don't know, he was making coffee. He didn't know. You put it on the hot plate, he made his coffee. Whatever. Okay? That's private. That's a private case. It was him doing it that's shogeg, you want to tell him, not tell him, that's different. If it's deoraita, you should tell him because he's over on a deoraita. If it's derabanan, maybe not. That's usually what what I learned from when I heard Rabbi Mansour say it. That's usually deoraita stuff you would recommend. But this guy in his private home. If a guy's doing it publicly, like he's holding an umbrella in the middle of the street on Shabbat, it's not shogeg. You should tell the guy, sir, you can't have an umbrella on Shabbat. Like, I hate to say it, but yesterday we were praying in the minyan, Yom Kippur. Guy walked. It was raining. Guy walked in with an umbrella on Yom Kippur. You know, and before we started, I sent a couple of messages out that it's going to be raining, and I sent the picture. I'm like, guys, don't carry your umbrella. I'm like, just so you know, because people forget. Guys, it's could you carry, not carry? We live in a place that's an eruv over here, so everybody carries. So people.
Even if you carry,
it's an oil. There's a problem, but the problem, you know what it is that there's some kids here that live in Surfside that don't understand that you that you can't carry on Shabbat because they lived in a place where they were born carrying. Like they don't understand that if you go to Brooklyn, you can't carry on Shabbat. It's like a grave isur, but they don't understand this isur because their whole life they were always strolling everything. And so like there has to be some form of education, guys. You're not allowed to carry on Shabbat. Just because Rabbi Weberman, Allah Shalom, went and did the Miami Beach Eruv, and everybody was fortunate to carry from this Eruv, and now the president, Mr. Koifman, who's handling it, makes sure that it's kasher every week. We still have to educate the kids, guys. It's not allowed to carry on Shabbat because they can go to places that don't have Eruv. It happens all the time. You understand? And if they're young, I think it's important to tell them. Okay. Also refer to the Sefer of Ille HaMitzvot of the Maharam Chagiz, Siman 547, Sefer HaPanim, page 5. They should not be included in a minyan, even if there are not 10 men excluding them. He says people that come to Shul, that constantly are talking during the Hazara, during the Kaddish, the guy doesn't shut up. This guy, he can't keep his mouth shut. He's got a grave problem. He just can't. The guy comes to Shul, he can talk with everyone except for God. He doesn't. According to those Sfarim, Il HaMitzvot, Maharam Hagiz, and Sefer HaPanim, he said you can't count those guys for a minyan. He goes, because when you're going to need him to answer Amen, he's not there. And then it becomes a Beracha Lebatala. He goes, and you cause it to yourself because this guy, he doesn't listen. He's just talking in Shul all the time. In the Shulchan Aruch, Ora Hayim Siman 124, Seif 4, it is written that when the Shaliach Sibur, the leader of the prayers, the Hazan, repeats the Tefillah, the prayer, the congregation must be quiet and concentrate on the Berachot that he recites and answer Amen. That's in Hazarat Hashatz he's talking about. If there are not at least 9 men who are concentrating on his berachot, it is almost if the berachot are being uttered in vain. Berachah batala, meaning why 9? Because you have the Hazan 10, so you need 9 more. The Turei Zahav, Seif Katan 2, we learn from this that one who does not listen, even if he is an intelligent person, is not considered as part of the minyan. Wow, so even if a guy is an intelligent learner, if he's not paying attention to the Shaliach Tzibur on the Hazara, he's not part of the minyan. Let's say, like,
if you have those people that they're learning.
That's exactly what he's talking about. A guy who's learning Gemara during the Hazarat Hashas, he can't be counted according to this source of the Shulchan Aruch.
If he davened, just came to have help with the minyan.
No, what do you mean? He already prayed? He already prayed. Oh, so it's a good question. I don't know. I have to ask my rabbi. It's a good question. If he's already prayed and he's in the shul during Hazara, it's a good question. I don't know. I'm assuming this was something, but I'll ask my rabbi and I'll get back to you, Yossi, tomorrow. It's a good question because it happens a lot. Like you come help the shul and the guy's quiet, but he has to be attentive on the second Hazara. He already heard it in the morning.
I thought you only need 6 that didn't pray, and then the other 4.
That's the start. Let's say that means that they are in the Amidah. They're ones, meaning they're in the Amidah already. But we're talking about a situation when they're not in the Amidah. So what I wasn't as careful until I read this, but what I started doing is I now either close my book or I follow along the Hazan word by word in my Sidur. So I'm actually like looking where I'll read it in English while he's saying it in Hebrew. So I'm following along, then I'm answering Amen. So like while he's saying it, I'm following along with the Shaliach Sibur that I'm like kind of focused and listening to him on each thing. There are 2 interpretations to his words. One, literally, that a person who does not hear because he is deaf cannot be included in the minyan, even if there are only 9 men excluding him. Okay, that's one of the interpretations. The second interpretation is that if he is not deaf, but he closes his ears and does not hear, and his mouth is speaking mundane matters, That's the second reason. The Turei Zahav also writes that on his commentary on Ora Hayim Siman 55, Seif Katan 4, we must stress this to prove the gravity of the sin of those fools who make an isur against seizing unnecessary conversation of mundane matters. Truly, I say, heaven forbid the inclusion of these sinners when a minyan is needed. Sefer HaPanim, page 9, Ot 2. So, according to those opinions, that you can include those people for a minyan. Interesting. Tomorrow we're going to read about the tremendous reward of those who don't converse during the Kaddish and Chazat Hashas. So here I guess he started off giving you the harsh realities, and now he's going to go into like, okay, what happens if you do stay silent and you do answer? What bid'ah comes in your life? Okay, so that's going to come tomorrow. That's the next thing. It's a very interesting book. It's called V'nomar Amen Mikdash Me'at. It was translated by Mrs. Huffman, Sarah Huffman Ludmir, and the book I found it in Hechal Shalom. It's a little book. Someone left it there. I started reading it. It says in there, please, give it out, copy it, share with people, teach it. That's like the whole book is like that. And by the way, he has a bunch of really interesting things in Hebrew, what we're going to go to at the end. There's an organization called the World Society for the Sanctity of the Synagogue and Answering Amen in Brooklyn, New York, and it's Project Shul in Brooklyn and in Lakewood. So it's like a whole organization. And supposedly there were like tens of thousands of these printed in Hebrew and in English, spread all over. And it's in these little mini books. I told you.
Who wrote it?
I don't know who's the actual author. Let's take a look. It didn't actually say it. I think that, I don't know. It didn't. Let me see. It says it was translated by this lady for this Rabbi Yitzchak Hoffman, but it doesn't actually say who wrote it. I think it was probably written Be'elem Shem, with no author's name on purpose. Maybe originally in Hebrew because the guy didn't want to get hunted down by pretty much a majority of people. So he probably wrote it without that. And he just started printing it, and he just sourced everything out with the Torah, and he told everyone, "You have a problem? Like, don't shoot the messenger. Go. I think that's what happened because I looked at it a few times, and there's like a bunch of information, but no author. But I'm assuming she translated it from somewhere. Okay, and the cover of the book says Yossi, unbelievable. Says En Gadol Lifnei Hakadosh Baruch Hu Yotzer Me'amen She'Yisrael Onim. He says there's nothing bigger. It's the eyes of God, and when people answer Amen, it's Devarim Rabbah Zayin. It says K'Yisrael Omrim Amen Yehi Shemei Rabbah. When they answer, Omer Hakadosh Baruch Hu Matai Ekabes Eret Yisrael Mibena Akum. When these people say Amen Yehi Shemei Rabbah, he says, God says, can't wait till I bring everybody back home. I'm going to bring everybody back. I'm bringing you back all to Eretz Yisrael, to Yerushalayim. You're going to all be barefoot on the marble in the Beit HaMikdash. You're going to pray Shaharit on the cold stone. Could you imagine? We're going to all be in the Beit HaMikdash, wearing these tunics, barefoot. If a guy wears shoes in the Beit HaMikdash or socks, he cannot come in. Yeah, we're going to learn about that. Okay, this is Midrash Huva. You got to walk barefoot in the Beit. You have to ground yourself. There's this thing in English today, in America, called grounding, where they say that when a person walks on the ground, he has a certain electrical energy that comes to him. And there's a whole article, we'll go into it at some point, because the Hachamim say a person can't walk barefoot. And they said a person should sell korot beto, he should sell the walls of his house before he goes barefoot. So how does grounding, that we know today has some nutritional and health benefits, work with the Hachamim? It does. There are ways, and we know that they wanted grounding, because when it came to the prayer, they said, everyone take off your shoes, and even Moshe ben Shal na'alecha ma'al raglecha, you got to go back to the surface of the ground, and that's when they connected to God the most. So we're going to go into that Gemara. We'll learn it be'iyun, because we'll see the Ma'amar Hazal. We'll see what it means. Hacham Musafi went into details about it, because I remember one time a person corrected me. I was walking barefoot in my home on the second floor, and I was like, that's not the Ma'amar Hazal. The Ma'amar Hazal is very detailed. It talks about grounding, not walking barefoot on the ground. So there's a discussion. Does it talk about someone who put tiles on his floor? That's not the ground. Is it talking about the ground, meaning the soil? Well, that's what I was correcting. And then I told him, what happens if the guy has a second floor with wood flooring? is that considered walking barefoot on the floor? I told him, for whatever reason, it wasn't for that specific case, but we'll learn it inside when it comes to it because it's really interesting. And it also, the idea of grounding can work even if you wear shoes. There are shoes made out of leather soles that can connect you back to the energy of the ground. And there are health benefits to it. We'll go into the medical article along with what the Hachamim say on it when we go into those details. And then the last thing is, so let's say a guy says Amen Yeheshem Rabba with all of his koach. I don't know what koach means. There's a mahloket. If koach means strength, like he wants to yell Amen Yeheshem like that, or if kocho means his strength, that he understands what he's saying, or if kocho means 28. What do you mean? From the word koach is gematria 28, and there's 28 letters that Ashkenazim answer. Amen Yeheshem Rabba mevarach la'adam mayayit parach. Or the Sfaradim do 28 words to Alme al-Maya. So there's a whole discussion if koach means strength, physical, loud, means intelligence, that you understand what you're saying, or if it's referencing the 28 words and you're saying, or the letters fully. We'll go into that when we get into it. Very good. We have just one more thing, and we're into the Gemara. This is our new thing we're adding today, which is called V'ha'er Einenu, Enlighten Our Eyes. It's a book that teaches a practical guide to Shemirat Einayim, written by Rabbi Yosef Shlomo Goldschmidt and translated by Rabbi Mordechai Gukovitsky. All right. So again, I told you always look for small books because they're easy to learn and it helps us negate the other small thing in our pockets, which is the other Satan, the phone. So we always carry the small books with that.
They have an organization called Enlighten.
By my it's a great organization. I'm in touch with them. I actually reached out to them to redistribute their videos, and they said to me, you can do it. They were very open to it. So on Shul.com, we're going to be spreading some of the videos on the Instagram and on a few of the places. And have some good news. I reached out to iTorah to ask them to repost some of their daily boosts. They have like a video every day of like a rabbi's, like a long clip, but they shorten it, put some music in the background, they make a little clip for it. When they originally did it, they didn't have like a title for it, for like this group, or like the title was something else. So I messaged one of the guys. I'm like, listen, you got to call this the Daily Boost, because that's what it is. It gives a guy a daily boost every day, and they did. I'm very glad they took my advice on it. They called it the iTorah Daily Boost. And a good friend of mine, Morris Dweck, who runs it, it's big sechut. The guy is a machine. The guy is the biggest Baal Hesed I ever saw. And he runs this whole organization. So he said it was okay. Let's repost. So we'll post some of them. You'll see some of the great, rabbis from Brooklyn, from Deal. They're really inspiring that do it. Okay, so he divides this book up in learning. We'll read this page, and then we'll go into the Gemara. The reason why I do all these small things every day is, remember when I told you that if we spend 18 minutes a day on like a couple of small sfarim, at the end of the year we'll have over 100 hours. That's the goal. The goal is that we'll spend 18 minutes. By the end of the year, you'll have more knowledge than you think, because just do a little page a day, you really knock out a lot of stuff. Look how much we covered, and we're not only just a little over a week on this. Okay, introduction, curtain closing. The 21st century confronts the Jew with unique challenges as never before. The long years of exile are drawing to an end, and the Satan in his death throes, fighting with all his might before he is vanquished forever. As the curtain comes down on the very last act, who will finally win the day? The Satan is desperate to prevail. Why is the Satan desperate now in our generation? Because it says when the Mashiach comes in, they're going to do shechita on him. And when they do shechita on him, what's going to end up happening is everyone's going to survive in the sense that you're going to still be the same person, but you're just not going to have no yetzer hara. You're not going to have a desire to do the bad things anymore. It's just going to go away. You're going to wake up in the morning, your desire is going to be, all right, let me just get ready, go get it in the mikveh, come to shul. You'll have no desire to do anything that was wrong. It's just going to be removed. And he knows that. And he has to do everything in his power, the Satan, to get everybody convinced to do any avon. And this cell phone was he was waiting 6,000 years for this one. He had this in his back pocket. He's like, look, I couldn't get into the shuls, I couldn't get into the kollelim, I couldn't get into every single gadol, not every, but many gadolim in the family. One day he couldn't get in. And the phone got in. And of course, the phone is great. We record the shiurim on it, and things like that. And we learn from it. But he's telling you this was the tactic of the Satan. It was not the tactic of the Gedulim to come up with this device. So the Satan knows it is now or never, and this is his last shot. No holds barred, ripped away from all former standards of modesty or decency. You know, in the 1950s on television, a woman would not go short sleeve. They wouldn't say the word they wouldn't say the word pregnant on TV because it could get visions and a visualization that they didn't want to encourage. This is the 1950s American society. Okay, look at where society has gone to today. What is today? Today, you can't let your kids on YouTube anymore unfiltered. Today, I've seen cartoons that have messages in them. I watched the cartoons a couple of times. I've seen them, and I'm like, wait, this is not a cartoon. They're sending a message to the kids of what they're supposed to think. I saw that. I started blocking out everything. I made a mistake that when my kids were younger, like I had iPads, I had devices, and I didn't know how to take it away from them. So what am I supposed to do? I gave my daughter, she got a gift as an iPad for her bat mitzvah, and all her friends had it, and she has this up. So what am I supposed to do? I was confused. How am I supposed to avoid these devices now? Because they already have them. So I bought them back. I told all my kids. I told the three of them. My daughter, one of them, I told her, I'm like, you have your phone? I'll give you $350 for the phone. The phone's worth like about a little less. She's like, oh, all right. I'm like, but you got to give me the phone. Oh, yeah. Then my other daughter, I paid her triple the amount of the iPad cost. If it cost $400, I gave her like $1,200. I was like, yeah, I'll give you $1,200. Give me that iPad back. And she took it. And what I did is I gave them all just a laptop. The older ones, a laptop and just a phone and filtering them. Because I told them, I made a mistake. I gave you guys too many devices. It was unfiltered. So I'll buy it back from you. Here's the money. Go buy whatever you want with it. Just not an internet device. And Baruch Hashem, they accepted. I'm very happy that my kids accepted, and they accepted the screen time thing. And I think they accepted not only because I did it in this way, but because I educated them on the reality. There's a video on Netflix. I don't encourage Netflix. I don't encourage anything of this nature, but it's an educational video that discusses, it's called The Social Experiment, how they put psychology into the phones and devices, where they have psychologists come in, and psychologists will teach these software creators how to put certain colors, certain vibrations, certain sounds into the phone that causes you to have an addiction to constantly look at it. Don't think that you're not normal, that you're constantly wanting to look at the phone or check it or get a message and you feel an urge. You feel like it's a magnet connecting you. This was done through psychology. And this whole video shows you from people that worked in there to tell you that this changed in the early 2010 to 2013. Facebook was the first to introduce this, where they started to put psychology. Now Facebook owns WhatsApp, they own Instagram, and it's a great medium to share information, but people are not well aware of how data and privacy is used. And a lot of people say, I'm not doing anything wrong. What do I care? It's not about doing anything wrong. It's that people don't understand what this is capable of doing. You know, you ever see advertisements and you're like, wow, I was thinking about this, or I was just talking about this. We're not going to go into how the devices know it. We will in the future. I'll show you how there's settings that allow it to get in. I've always played with the technology before it came out. So as the technology came out, I was the guy who loved playing with it, messing around with it, hacking it in any way that to kind of see how the things work. And I'll show you how you can change settings on there. I recently made a setting change on YouTube because we upload a lot to YouTube, where I blocked out all my history and previous videos completely and everything of any kind. Why? You ever go to YouTube and you notice there's like a ton of videos on the front page and they're based on your previous watching. So a lot of times you feel addicted to click on it because the titles and the videos looks very enticing. And I had that problem. And I said to myself, I don't want this anymore. So I blocked it out. When you go onto YouTube on my phones now and on my computer, it's just a blank screen. It looks like a Google page and just has a search bar. So I don't have to be fed information. I'm just coming here to do what I need to do and move on. I don't want to be fed information that's going to be addictive. Now, when you know this going in, this is what I've told a few of the high school teachers. I'm like, if you don't educate the teens about this, then they don't know this. And they go in thinking that it's okay or they're spending time. The moment you educate them, now they know. No, there's internet. All the kids have phones and internet. Everybody.
No, but the school itself, when they have, I spoke to the teacher,
yeah,
the computer teacher. We don't have internet. They don't have access to internet.
Yeah. They can say they don't have access, but it's all a joke. Their offices all have internet. Yeah, and they all have phones and they'll have laptops and everything. It's all a joke. And I tell them all the time, I'm like, if you try to hide it, you're not doing yourself or anything. You have to educate the kids that this exists. Why is it okay? Why is it not okay? What's dangerous about it? What are the software companies doing? So at least the playing field is leveled. So at least a person goes in, he knows this device is how to deal with it. That's really all it's about. And I haven't seen anyone really from the technology side and the religious side go into it on it. There's programs where they go into the schools and they take the smartphones away from the girls, they give them flip phones and things like that, which is great. But when they went to my daughter's school, Beis Yaakov, they did Beis Yaakov Miami. They were doing it. I asked her, did they educate you on this stuff of this? She's like, no. I'm like, if they educated the girls on this, the girls would want to put the filter, because I put the filters and stuff like that because I realized, I'm like, this is being done to make me addicted to it. And once I understood this, I became more cognizant. All right, now I got it. I need this tool for whatever reason right now. Maybe one day I'll graduate where I don't need the cell phone anymore. I don't know. But at least I now know what's going on. You understand? And I blocked out like internet news sites, things like that, because it was just worthless information that just makes a person addicted. It's hadashot, just constantly. Okay. And we who seek to avoid the impure feel fragile and vulnerable to provocation and insult. It feels like there's some worldwide conspiracy that's out to suck everyone down into the mud. The method may be subtle and suggestive or shrill and aggressive, but it almost always seems to aim its barbs towards our eyes. Okay? Living in today's race for instant fun and with the prevailing attitude that anything goes, how does a Jew hope to keep his eyes pure and holy? So let's finish up the page. The commuter packs his briefcase, the hiker his backpack. Similarly, the Jew who has inyane kedusha in the forefront of his conscience need to be equipped when he's going somewhere. Being well aware of what might lie out there, ready for a collision course with his eyes, he'll have a plan as well as a backup for minimizing the danger. So that's the beginning of the book. Tomorrow we'll continue. And what he's doing, in essence, is just giving us tactics. He's going to show you like just simple tactics of what you could do to help you avoid this issue of looking at the wrong things. All right, let's continue into the Gemara. We are in Masechet Megillah. Okay, Yossi, I want you to come read the Gemara because you weren't with us the last time. We're going to quickly review, and then אמר רב שמואל בר יצחק, י' ג' זמן קהילה לכל היא, לא צריך לרבויה. הכנה מי' ג' זמן קהילה לכל היא ולא צריך לרבויה. ואם השיצר ושבשר ולא יעבור כתיב. רבי שמואל בר נחמני אמר כימים אשר נחו בהם היהודים, ימים כימים, לרבות י"א וי"ב, ואמה תרסר ותלסר. Okay, so the Gemara, guys, we'll just quickly review. We were talking originally from a statement of Rav Shimon bar Abba, who said in the name of Rabbi Yohanan. Do you remember, Yossi, we made the statement of Rav Shimon bar Abba in the name of Rabbi Yohanan? What did Rav Shimon bar Abba say? Remember that? Rav Shimon, he made the statement in the name of Rabbi Yohanan. Okay? Follow with me on this one because we're gonna have to get this through. Oh, sorry, let's do the Yehi Ratzon. Yehi Ratzon milafnecha Adonai Elohai shelo yireh davar takala al yadi velo yakashel bidvar halacha v'yismechu b'chaverai velo amar al tameh tahor velo al tahor tameh velo yakashelu b'chaverai bidvar halacha v'esmach b'hem ki Adonai yiten chokhmah mipiv da'at u'tmuna gal enai v'abit niflot mitoratecha. Okay, so the Gemara was telling us that had they know 5 days, not Yudalid and Tetvav, so we had Rav Shimon bar Abba. He gave us he told us a pasuk bizmanehem. It could have said bizmanam or bizman. Bizmanehem must have meant plural. The extra bizmanehem, extra days. They tried to say maybe it should be 16, 17. We said no, can't be 16, 17 because lo ya'avor. So it's only that. Good. Then we have Rav Shmuel bar Yitzhak who said zmanehem really only gave you plural, and plurality in its minimum is 2. Plus the Yud Dalet Vav means you had 4 days. So how did the Mishnah say 5? He said, no, Rab Shmuel Bar Yitzchak said, no, Yud Gimel Zman Keilah, it was the day of the battle, Ta'anit Ested. And therefore, the 4 days was okay. Yud Dalet Et Vav we have in the Mishnah, that's in the Megillah. We have 2 extra days for plural Bizmanehim, and that will be for 11 and 12. And 13 was the fast day, so I don't need any pasuk. Good. The Gemara said, what about 16, 17? No, Velo Yavor. Okay, then came Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani. He said, wait, let me use the word Kayamim. Why do you use Bizmanehim? Kayamim means like the days. And like the days means days like the days, two. So you have 4. So he says, use that for 11 and 12. You can't use again why wouldn't you use it for 12 and 13? Because it said Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yitzchak that Yud Gimel Zman Keilah Lakolhi, which means Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani, who's saying use the word Kayamim for 2 days, agrees with what? He agrees that Yud Dalet and Tet Vav is already accepted from the Megillah, and he agrees that 13 is Zman Keilah Lakol. He only needed the 2 days that he needed extra, so he wanted to use Kayamim as the pasuk. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani, Mai Tama Lo Amar Bizmanehem. So Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani, why didn't you use like Rav Shemin Bar Abba in the name of Rabbi Yohanan? Use Bizmanehem. Why did you come up with another pasuk? Why did we need this? And the Gemara tells us, Zman Zmanam Zmanehem Lo Mashmale. He didn't accept that. You want to continue reading? Yossi, you want to read Rav Shemin Bar Abba, Mai Ta'ama Lo Amar Kayamim? Read that one. Rav Shemin. Explain it to me, Yossi.
למה רב שמן לא סבר כמו רבי שמואל בר נחמני שאומר מקיימים?
Exactly. He's asking a good question. So the Gemara is asking a question now on all the statements. They're asking a question. I don't know when they all lived, all these rabbis. I didn't number the years on it yet, because we're going to go back and do that, where we're going to see, are these people that are discussing a topic, or were they actually alive at the same time? We're going to come back into that. So the question of Rav Shemin Bar Abba is, why didn't you use, they went back to the original. Rav Shemin Bar Abba said in Rabbi Yohanan's name, Mi Bizmanehim. So they're asking him, why didn't Rav Shemin Bar Abba use Mikayamim? They flipped it now. First they went to Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani. Why are you using this word? Then they went back to the original statement. They said, why did you use Bizmanehim? They wanted to the Gemara was trying to figure it out. Amar lach, hahu ledarotu dichtiv. He said, what do you mean? The Gemara is saying that word mikayamim was not talking about extra days. It was talking about the future years that they're going to read on those same days. Okay, now the Gemara wants to identify who is the Mishnah originally from. Okay, Lior, start read. Amar Abba, Ariel, read. Amar Abba, Amar Abba Bar Hanna, Amar Rabbi Yochanan.
אמר בר חנה, ויהודה יוחנן, זו דברי רבי עקיבא,
Sitim Ta'a. Okay, so Rabba Bar Hanna, he says in the name of Rabbi Yohanan. Remember, this is the same Rabbi Yohanan that Rav Shemin Bar Abba. Remember, Rav Shemin Bar Abba, he quoted this Rabbi Yohanan on Bizmanehim. So this original Rabbi Yohanan, Rabba Bar Hanna is saying, this Mishnah is Divrei Rabbi Akiva Sitim Ta'a. Okay, Sitim Ta'a means like anonymous. So it's all Rabbi Akiva. The Darish Zman Zmanam Zmanehim. Continue to read. But okay, what does that mean? That he would be Doresh. He would explain this whole days issue. Zman Zmanam Zmanehim. That was Rabbi Akiva's Hidush. Okay. Ela. Aval. Omrim. Chachamim Omrim. Yeah. That's it. Ela Bizmana. He said, so what they're saying here is that the Mishnah, Rabbi Bar Hana is telling us, oh, by the way, this Mishnah was like Rabbi Akiva, Sitim Ta'a. And we're going to look now at Rashi, who gives us a couple of things. That Stam Mishnah is Rabbi Meir, who's a student of Rabbi Akiva. He said this whole 5 days reading was Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Meir. He goes, but the Chachamim, they didn't go for that. The Chachamim only agreed 14 and 15. They didn't agree that you can go read 11, 12, and 13. That was Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Meir. So this is what the Gemara is telling us. Now, the Gemara now wants to challenge the statement that previously was said on Rabbi Yohanan. Let's take a look. Metive. Metive. Is it? Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Matai.
בזמן
שהשנים.
כתקנן וישראל שרויים על אדמתן.
Okay, אבל
בזמן הזה הואיל ומסתכלים בה אין קוראים אותה אלא בזמנה.
Okay, very good. So what it's saying here is that Rabbi Yehuda, they're bringing the Gemara now. Mitiv is now going to be followed by a Braita. So they're bringing the Braita right now, and they're saying that Rabbi Yehuda says, when do the villagers, when they're allowed to read earlier than the 14 and 15? Only in times when they have a Beit Din and the years are organized and they're on their land of Israel. They have the territory, they have the land, and they have the Beit Din. When we have that, then you can read earlier. But otherwise, you can't read it ela bizmana. Lior, you want to continue? Rabbi Yehuda ali bademan. You see that? Okay, so read it, explain it. Rabbi Yehuda ali bademan. Who's Rabbi Yehuda? The previous statement of the Braita that says that you only read it on extra days, 11, 12, and 13 in Israel, when you have the land. Okay, when they have their land and they have the Beit Din, everything's in Israel. That's when you can read earlier. Rabbi Yehuda ali bademan. So Rabbi Yehuda, who do you follow with that statement? Meaning, Rabbi Yehuda, are you following Rabbi Akiva? Are you following the Chachamim? Who do you follow? Ilema ali bad Rabbi Akiva. Read it. Yeah, well, explain it. Say it in Aramית and then explain it. Ilema. Ilema. If you're going to say ali bad Rabbi Akiva, Ariba means you're going to source it back. You know, back to him.
Then by today's standards, you follow Rabbi Akiva.
Yes.
Because time is fixed. We have Beit Din at the time we'll do it. And then if you go by the Rabbanan, the rabbis who kind of dispute.
Rabbi Yehuda would follow the Chachamim, yeah.
Yeah. בזמן שהשנים בתקנן וישראל שרויים על אדמתן מהקרינן.
We may read it on any of the 5 days. Of the 5 days. Tiyufta Rabbi Yochanan Tiyufta. And then this is
goes against
Rabbi Yochanan. Why does it go against Rabbi Yochanan? Because Rav Shimon bar Abba said Bismanehim in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. And he said Bismanehim means 5 days. So how could it be 5 days if you're telling me that it's only 2 days, but it's 5 days only when they have they're on their land in Eretz Yisrael and they have a court, Sanhedrin, Beit Din active. Okay.
So Yochanan said you can never read it before the 14th.
You can't.
Megillah, at least.
You can't read them before. Let's take a look at that again. Yes, that was the statement of Rabbi Bar Hana in the name of Rabbi Yohanan. So how could Rabbi Yohanan come back later and tell us otherwise? Very good, very nice. You are excellent. Okay, let's continue. The Gemara presents an alternative version of this discussion. Let's go into it. Ika de Amre. Some say that the text was actually a little different. Amar Rabba Bar Hana Mar Yochanan. So what is the Gemara doing here now, Yossi? The Gemara is saying now we have a problem because we have two rabbis that's quoted Rabbi Yochanan, and they both give us pisukim. They both backed up their sources, but they don't really go together. They don't fit with each other. Yeah. So because they don't fit with each other, the Gemara is not going to say why is that. Ika de Amre. Some say Amar Rabba Bar Hana Amar Rabbi Yochanan, that the statement is that Zu Divrei Rabbi Akiva Setim Ta'a, that this was the ruling of the Mishnah, and in the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. About Chachamim Amru, the rabbi said, Bazeman hazeh ho'il u'mistakelin ba en korin ota ela bizmana. Okay, read and explain Lior. Go right ahead. Ika de Amre, yeah.
Ika de Amre Amar Rabba Bar Hana Amar Rabbi Yochanan Zu Divrei Rabbi Akiva
Setim Ta'a. Okay, so whenever you're saying it, stop a minute, explain it. She said, so Rabbi Bar Hana is saying
in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that this is what Rabbi Akiva was saying, the anonymous one. But Chachamim Amru, but then Chachamim were saying, "Bazman hazeh ho'ilu mistaklin ba."
When they mean "Bazman hazeh ho'ilu mistaklin ba," what do you mean they look? What do they look? They look for Pesach. Yeah, they have to assume the way that they did it is the reason why Purim, the day of Purim, is so important is that whatever day you're going to celebrate Purim 30 days later is going to be Pesach. So the people at the time didn't have old calendars and phones and ways to know this. Whenever they celebrated Rosh Chodesh Adar and they knew subsequently it's going to be Yud Daled, they started counting the 30 days so that they knew that Pesach was coming. Not everyone, they weren't communicating with everyone to have it. So the Hachamim had to be careful because they understood that the people at the time, how they were calculating when the holiday was coming. People lived in places where they didn't have communication. So they knew today was Purim. And by the way, even for the villagers, remember we said that even when the villagers read earlier, they had to do the mitzvah of Purim on the day of Purim. So even the villagers who read 11, 12, and 13 and they read early Yom HaKanisa, they still had to do on Purim. Why? Because everyone was counting from Yud Daled Adar all the way, or Tedvav, they were counting, they knew when Pesach would come. So
we're saying by today's standards, you're still looking at Pesach, a function of Purim plus 30.
Yes.
And
So one may read the Megillah only in its proper time, which is the 14 and the 15. Let's look at 46. He says explains it on 40 and 41. Let's read 40 and 41 on the bottom.
During the temple era, the years and months were scheduled by the main Beit Din, seated in Jerusalem. The Beit Din decided which years were to be leap years, and also declared the beginnings of the months based upon sightings of the new moon. The populace was informed of these decisions by messengers who went from the Beit Din to all parts of Eretz Israel. For example, once the Beit Din had declared the beginning of the month of Nisan, messengers were sent to relay this information. These messengers reached even the most remote regions of the country by the 15th of Nisan, first day of Pesach. Thus, the entire population was informed in time of the exact date to observe Pesach.
Yeah, and they based this on Purim, because they only went out. How did they know the Rosh Chodesh Nisan when they knew when Purim was? They were able to count. Now, let's look at 41. The following destruction of the temple.
Following the destruction of the temple, the Jews were dispersed in foreign lands too far from the Beit Din for messengers to reach in time. Lacking information from the messengers, the people had to calculate when Pesach will fall by counting 30 days from the day on which the Megillah was read. In the typical year, Pesach begins 30 days after the 14th of Adar. Consequently, if the Megillah were to be read before the 14th of Adar, people might observe Pesach before its proper time. This will result in their eating chametz on the last days of Pesach, erroneously believing that Yom Tov had already ended. To prevent this mistake from being made, it was decreed that the Megillah be read no earlier than the 14th.
Okay, you guys understand it, Yossi?
Mm-hmm.
You understand what's happening?
Let's say right now, if you read on Yud Gimel, right, and then you're allowed to read on Yud Gimel, you calculate 30 days later, you're doing Pesach one day earlier. Pesach one day earlier, you're eating chametz.
At the end of Pesach, you're eating chametz, and that was.
If that's the case, I would assume, they say if it's walled or not walled, why have that?
No, but the walled cities all knew that they were reading one day after the 14th.
No, but it could confuse just.
No, but they knew
the general public.
But whoever read the Megillah, why it wasn't confusing? Because it was meforash. It's right there in the Megillah that you read the Perazim, the unwalled city.
For him it's 29 days.
So he knew, it wasn't oblivious, but it starts to become confusing when a guy reads it 3 days before. Now he said to me, I read it on the 11th. Pesach is today.
We say again, they're still doing the mitzvot
Yes.
the same day.
You're right.
So who cares when you read the Megillah? When you give them Mishlah Manot, when you give
exactly. I agree. But what we're learning, and when we're learning, we have to assess not just the logic that we have today based on our education. We have to assess all the logics, especially of the time that this was written. What was their situation at the time? To find these things out. Okay. Okay, now the Gemara is going to bring a braita that's going to support Rabbi Yohanan. Tanya nami hachi. Okay, Tanya is obviously a braita. Okay, nami hachi means gamken.
Braita didn't make it to one of the Mishnah.
Yeah, I told you. Why didn't they make it to the?
Yeah.
Why not? You remember what I told you?
They're just all.
No, but why not?
They lost it.
Why not? No, it wasn't lost.
Was it either intentionally or unintentionally?
It was intentionally or unintentionally. There was two things. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi did it. He took in certain batei midrash for Mishnayot. They existed others that he was aware of. He just didn't get to putting all the Mishnayot inside. Those became braitot, which means they have a certain level of the Mishnah, but they weren't included in the Mishnah. Some were unintentional, some were intentional. Sometimes he skipped over batei midrash on purpose for whatever reason, and sometimes he didn't. That's how he gathered all the Mishnayot. He didn't go to the libraries. He went to the batei midrash at the time. Okay. So Tanya namihachi. This is now a braita. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Ematai בזמן שהשנים כתקנן מסדר שירורין על אדמתן. Rabbi Yehuda says, when are they able to read before the 14th in the villages? When Israel is on al admatan and the calendar is put together well with the Sanhedrin. Aval bizman hazeh, but in today's time, what do you mean today's time? After the Churban Habayit, this Braita was after the Churban Habayit. Ho'il umistakelin ba, because people look at the day of Pesach, of Purim to assume Pesach, and korinota ela bizmana. So now we have a Braita that's saying that Rabbi Yohanan might have agreed before the Churban Habayit that it was okay to read on the other days. It wasn't an issue. But he was discussing now after the Churban Habayit, when there's no clarity for the people that are far away from the cities, then in order to avoid confusion, we don't read it on those days. So seemingly Rabbi Yohanan, during the time of the Beit HaMikdash, would say 11, 12, and 13 is good, but then after the Beit HaMikdash would not. And this is a Braita, that using this Braita, why is this good? Because now it explains that Rav Shimon bar Abba says Bizmanehim, 11, 12, 13 is good. And it also explains the other statement of Rabba bar Hanan, Amar Rabbi Yohanan, that they only read it Bizmana. Yeah, they're all good. Rabbi Yohanan said both things. He just said one was pertinent to the time of the Beit HaMikdash, one was pertinent when there's no Beit HaMikdash, and he explained the reason so that people understand. We don't want to confuse people. Okay? Very good. You guys got it?
Admatan, sorry, is what again?
Where?
Shirim
al admatan. Shiruyin means they are like fixed on their land. Admatan means the land. Shiruyin al admatan. What does that mean generally? I told you this the other day, that I think it was in 2013 or 2015 that the state of Israel reached 51% capacity of Jewish population. There's a confusing article. Some say it was before or after, but around the 2013, 2015, it could have been earlier or later, give it or take a couple of years. We have now the majority of the Jewish people living in Israel. This is extreme importance because it's never happened from before the Churban Habayit. Harambam says in order for the Mashiach to come, you have to have the majority of Jews living in Israel. In order for Nevu'ah, prophecy, to come back, there has to be 50% of the Jewish population on Israel, on the Israeli soil. So by doing that, we're pretty much setting up the pieces for the Yemot HaMashiach, Eliyahu Navi Zechadov, and the Mashiach to come. And Rebel Wine, one of the main Jewish history teachers that I use, and I source and I listen to all of his stuff, and I met him. Meeting him once, he was originally from Chicago. He was in Miami for many years teaching. He came down here. He was a lawyer, and then he came down here, became a rabbi. He wasn't planning on becoming a rabbi. He just didn't want to become a lawyer. He wrote a whole book about it. I read the book. It's the most fantastic book of why he did it. When he came down here, what he did is he would drive all the rabbis that came visiting to Miami around. He would spend time with them. And when I met him and when I saw what he did, I was coming down to Miami, and I said to myself, all right, if any of the rabbis are going to come from New York, from Israel, from Deal, from Brooklyn, I'm going to host them. I'm going to put them in hotels. I'm going to serve them, take them out for dinners, and drive them. I said, because I have a role model to copy, Rabbi Berler. I mean, he was a businessman, and he ended up becoming a rabbi, and he's extremely intelligent. The first time I met him, it changed everything the way I thought. And I recommend everyone that you see him in his life now. He's older. Now he's in Israel. He comes to New York to see his family from time to time. Rabbi Daniel Gladstein had a chance to see him when he came to New York recently, and he asked him a very good question. He said, do you think today it's more pertinent for a rabbi or teacher to teach through writing books or newsletters or publications or videos? He asked the rabbi this question. The rabbi's intelligent. The rabbi is sharp. He lost his vision for the most part today. He has a hard time seeing, but he still speaks, and it's exactly the same. He said today the videos and the books would probably be equal. Maybe the videos even more, because most people today are not reading. They'll watch a video, they enjoy listening to the audio, and they'll get closer to God. So he said today, I think the video is a book, is like what the book was. And furthermore, I've told this to a lot of rabbis that I've helped record and I've given them recording devices and set them up on YouTube and like different ways to record. I tell them all the time, always record, because your recordings can become a book. Your books cannot become a recording. But that's, of course, you have to make sure that the recordings are, properly saved and not lost. That's important because you'd be surprised. Sometimes, you can have the best rabbi with the best recordings, but if it's not accessible to the people or it's difficult to get it, people can't learn.
Think about it. It's like the modern version of the Chabad Sichot with the Rebbe.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
It's like seeing those gem videos of the Lubavitch Rebbe, of Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson Ben Hana, that you see those videos. They're very inspiring. And now today they put captions on the bottom. He explains to you everything. I never had a chance to meet the Lubavitch Rebbe because I went to Gan Yisrael in 1993, the year after, the year right after he died. So I didn't have a chance to meet him. I have no doubt if I would have met him, I probably would have been a Chabadnik in some capacity. Because,
My grandma took me when I was a kid.
Oh, you're a kid? You got $1? You don't realize this was big. My mom went. My dad went. I'll give you a story. Once, my dad, we used to live on East 12th Street on Avenue S, and we had a small house. This was when I was really young, and my father wanted to move to a new house, and he was trying to convince my mom. At the time, my mom was very comfortable. It's not easy to move. It's difficult moving, and she was settled. And Baruch Hashem, the house was okay. But my father wanted a much bigger house, and he already had bought the house. He already was doing construction, and my mom wasn't convinced to go. And for good reason. Like I told you, it's not easy to move. So he went to Lubavitch Rebbe, and he went to him for advice. Like, what do you do? And he went to Beracha. And he gave him beracha. He's going to be matzliach. He said, don't worry. Everything's going to be okay. You're going to be matzliach. And a short time later, my mom just said, okay. And she ended up moving to the new house. And that's the house that they live in till today. And Baruch Hashem, from that house, she married Baruch Hashem, all the kids, his grandkids. I can tell you that my father has hosted maybe 1,000 or more rabbis in the house. When we were kids, I don't think there was one Friday night that I remember for 20 years straight that my father didn't have a rabbi from Israel. You could imagine that. Every single week we had, sometimes I was a kid, we would have these big Gidolim, Rashi Yeshivot, come over and eat. And at the time, 20 plus years ago, hosting rabbis was not like it is today. Today, it's a big thing. Oh, the rabbi's here, everything. It's a big thing. At the time, it wasn't so simple. A rabbi would come, even if he was a big gadol. No, it wasn't so easily hosted or had a place to eat or had accommodations. My father put himself into an uncomfortable position to host them. He showed us that he really loved Talmidei Chachamim, and that had an influence on me.
Also, your mother, not just
Huh? Oh, my mother too. My mother for sure. My mother for sure. Yeah, you're right. My mother for sure. And I was able to meet some great rabbis that really inspired me. And the one thing, when you're a kid and you have all these rabbis over your house on your Shabbat table and you're talking to them, what it did to a lot of us in our family is that we became like family to them, even in the way we speak with them. So sometimes I've had comments before where people say, how do you say that to that rabbi? I'm like, what do you mean? What did I say wrong? He's like, you speak to him very casually. I said, I apologize to them. I know him for many years. We're a little bit open with each other. When they would be open over the house on Shabbat, I would oftentimes ask them blunt questions about things. I remember one time we had a rabbi over. He's like, I have 22 kids. I was like, haha. I don't believe him. I'm like, what are their names? I'm like, 22 kids. Let me see. I think he got 2 of them. He was confused about 2 of them. When I put him on the spot. But it wasn't the point. I was just you're a kid. You're 10 years old. Someone tells you what? You have 22 kids? What do you do? How does that work? There's all these interesting things. I remember we had one time a rabbi over who didn't talk on Shabbat. Did Tani Dibur on Shabbat. It was I didn't know what to do. We the whole Shabbat, didn't talk. After Shabbat, talking, Divrei Torah. We had very interesting things. I don't think my father invited that rabbi over ever again. I don't think my mom was so thrilled with that. But we had some unbelievable Talmidei Chachamim. I remember we had this one rabbi, Rav Nisim Abadi alav Shalom. He used to come from Ramat Shlomo, Israel. I don't know. He had some kedusha. Every time he would come, I would just hug him and I just want to sit with him. He would open up a Gemara, and I remember he wanted the big Gemara. So my wife, when I got married, got me these huge Gemariyot. They're this big. It's 18-inch Gemara, big letters. So I remember he would come over. He was so interesting to sit around. He would open the Gemara, And then it was my dad, me, my brothers. We would sit around him, and he would just like read the Gemara and tell us the stories. And I'm not kidding. Like he would sit there for 2 hours, and I thought it was like 5 minutes. You would leave. You would like be attracted like a magnet to the Gemara. Like you couldn't leave it. He was one of the rabbis that I saw this from. I came very close to him. He passed away. He had the mahala, and his wife is still alive, Celine. So from time to time, I tell her she's almana. I call her, hi, how are you? Everything's okay, But he was very, very special. You have the, they say, here's the sidur. Just so the hachamim they gave you all the tricks. They told you everything. Look here, they told you. They told you that you want to have beracha, you want to see good stuff in your life. They told you how you can do it. They didn't trick you. The hachamim were very, very open. They didn't want to hide from the people how to be successful. This is a Mishnah in Pe'ah, Perek Aleph. Elu devarim she'en lahem shi'ur. There's some things they have no measurement to do how you want to do them. Hape'ah was in the field. You had to have a corner of the field. So the Chachamim gave you, measurement 42%, 1, 2, 3%. They gave you percentages and fractions, really. The Torah gave you fractions, and we use percentages of what the corner would be. Pe'ah. That's pe'ah is also like the pe'ot, the corners. Okay. Hape'ah. The joke is that what do the rabbis say? They say on today there's such an issue with the wigs. Women's wigs became so long, and they became so fashionable that you don't even know that today they're wigs. I'm not kidding. Today now with the lace tops, these wigs had gone to a place. Chamavaja would really go nuts on this one, because he was anti the wigs big time. So the joke was elu devarim she'en lahem shiur. There's some things, the length of the wig, they have no hape'ah. They have no shiur. They make them longer and longer. I think that was one of the jokes of it. But bikurim, what's bikurim? Is that you have to bring from one of the seven minim in Israel only. Bikurim. The first one is the first one to Yerushalayim. Okay, that you have no shiur. Meaning you want to bring a lot. You want to bring a little. Bring what you have to bring. Re'ayon is going to visit the Bet Hamikdash. Ugmilut hasadim Talmud Torah. Doing chesed, no shiur. Talmud Torah, no shiur. Elu devarim she'adam. This is in Kedushin Lametet. She'adam oseh otam. If he does them, ochel mipirotim ba'alam hazeh, he eats from the fruits in this world. But the entire principle, he's going to be paid in full. You just get all the benefits in this world. They tell you what they are. Respecting your parents. Ugmut hasadim, doing chesed for people. You're going to see from the fruits in this world. Uvikur cholim, visiting sick people. B'hachnasat orchim, having guests over your house. Now, when it means hachnasat orchim, I don't think this means literally when you're inviting your friend over for dinner on Friday night. I think that hachnasat orchim is talking about an oreya who is in a place, he has nowhere to eat or sleep. He needs somebody. That's hachnasat. You bring him into your house because he needs the place. That's what I believe. Because otherwise, you tell me hachnasat orchim. I have friends over my house all the time. Hachnasat orchim meaning the guy who needs a place. I'll give you just an example. I was here one time in Surfside by one of the shuls, and it was Shabbat afternoon. We finished the kiddush, and I saw a Talmid Hacham dressed like a Talmid Hacham, religious, beard, everything, and he was with his wife in the corner. And I saw the guy take two breads, like putting breads together and preparing. And I was like, "Where are you from?" He's like, "From Israel." I said to him, "What are you doing?" He said to me, I said, "You don't have a place to eat?" He said, "No." I said, "So come over to my house, then you can eat." I said, "You want to ask your wife?" I said, "I don't have to ask my wife. My wife has been on the boat with me with people that need a place to eat. No problem. She's a big tzaddik. Don't worry, come." So he came over. He ate by the house, and he's like to me, "How did you put this?" He came to the house. We had the whole thing. I'm like, because when I saw that, I signaled my son. I'm like, "Go tell mom we have two people coming." He went 10 minutes before. By the time we got there, the guy came. The plates were already there. He's like, "How did you know that I was coming with my wife?" I'm like, "Because I think it's the first time I saw a rabbi without a place." I'm like, I'm 2 steps ahead of you. I'm like, I was looking for a guest for Shabbat. I'm like, I found you, come over. The guy he stayed with us. We spoke Torah for like 4 hours, back and forth. He texted me before the holiday also to say hello. This is hachnasat orchim. You have to be sharp. The hachamim say you have to use your eye to pay attention. Where can I find a mitzvah? Guy needs a place to eat. He needs something. Grab it. Go after him. Go help him with this man. This is one hachnasat orchim. Hashkamat bet hakneset. Coming early to shul in the morning. You're going to see from the fruits in this world. Shalom ben adam lahavero. Making peace between two people who are arguing. Ben ish ishto, husband and wife, which is the hardest thing in the world. Husband and wife arguing or having a mahloket. The hardest thing in the world is making shalom bayit with them. The hardest thing. A guy can have a better chance having Kiryat Yam Suf and splitting the sea like Moshe Rabbeinu, then it's that difficult. And the people that devote their time to it, they're going straight to Gan Eden. B'Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam. And it gives us a little thing. He says, oh, by the way, if you add all those together and you put all the benefit, he goes, coming to learn Torah here, or anywhere for that matter, is Keneged all of them. Keneged Kulam, meaning if you put all of them on one side, and you put just Talmud Torah there. Now, does Talmud Torah mean literally learning? Then it would say Limud Torah. What's Talmud Torah? Talmud Torah would be teaching. So the benefit would be on the teaching side. So even though we're all learning together, you guys are learning, teach your kids, you teach your other friends, whatever. Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam. We'll end it here and we'll continue tomorrow. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.